we noticed that trees were dying on the edge of the salt marshes. You see something in nature and you're like, well, that's interesting, and other people comment on it. And so it's really an observational project. You know, it's hard to remember what things looked like 2 years ago or 5 years ago, especially 10 years ago. And so the Cedar study is really a way to formalize those observations and to collect some data along the way. Can't ask the trees, so it's like we're gonna collect some data on it. So what it's a matter of going through and collecting our subject matters, in these cases, which trees we're going to study. So putting tags on the trees, GPSing the trees, so that you know exactly which tree it is, so you can revisit the same place through time and look at the health of that tree. It's the first upland tree you see, and it's sensitive to a lot of different things. It needs a very particular habitat to grow in. It has to be just, you know, dry enough, not too wet. It needs a lot of sunlight. So if your hypothesis is that sea level rise is occurring and it's causing the vegetation to shift, essentially areas that used to be wetlands are now completely underwater as sea level, you know, floods deeper, and then those wetlands have to shift into the uplands, and then the uplands have to respond to that. The first upland tree you hit as those wetlands move into that are these eastern red cedars. So it's a great indicator of vegetation shift due potentially to sea level rise. It's also, because it's very exposed right on the edge of the forest, sensitive to salt storms, storm surges, things like that too. So it can be an indicator of both long-term sea level rise or changes in shorter-term weather events. The one other thing that's kind of special about this tree is it's very rot resistant. So eastern red cedar is what you line your closets with, your cedar chest, your hope chest, that's eastern red cedar. It leaves behind its skeletal remains, and they persist because it's very rot resistant. So you can look at trees, you can find stumps that are, you know, multiple hundreds of years old still out on the landscape. I think the speed at this is happening is maybe faster than we were thinking it would be. I find that to be surprising. And then we were able to do some work with another researcher who was looking at ancient forests, essentially cedar forests that are stranded now out in the water, out in the mud just offshore. And to find those same trees out there and then to be able to show where they were now where people are swimming. We had actually put signs up that said underwater hazards. You know, it was roots and trees that you essentially could tangle yourself in or hurt yourself while you're down at the ocean beach. And that's where the old forest was at. Probably the number one thing to do is be supportive of land protection. People think that they can't do those things, but politically they can be active. They can speak up in town meeting and be supportive in their communities.